there. I'm Chief Meteorologist Jason Smith. We're going to do an update here, not our normal time for this, but we've got something brewing out in the tropics, so we want to let you know what's happening here this evening. Very muggy evening across the Gulf Coast. Obviously, all eyes on the tropics, so I'm going to put myself up in the panel here. And you can see we've got an X and then a red area, and so I want to shed some light on what all this means. And this is, the X is where the wave axis is right now. It is not a depression, and it is not a tropical storm right now. It is just a wave. So it's part of the earliest part of the tropical process, really. And it's working through the Dominican Republic and now more towards Haiti, and then eastern Cuba, which is a very mountainous area, and that can be disruptive to a tropical system. And if the center of the wave axis is trying to organize over land, obviously that's not going to happen. But there's some warm water there, and there's way more moisture associated with it, and so the odds of development about 40% in the next 2 days. We're thinking Saturday evening we could start to see this begin to emerge out in the Gulf of Mexico, and that's where it could develop. All right, so let's take a look at some of these maps. Odds of development, 40% in 2 days, but 70% in 7 days. I expect all these odds to continue to increase because it's pretty likely this thing will form into a depression or storm. It's located over the greater Antilles now, and it may develop in the eastern Gulf on Saturday and Sunday. So this will be one for us to watch. Anytime we have something going on in our backyard, it can cause for concern. And will we have any impacts here? I mean, even over around Destin, it's too early to tell. If it takes that easterly track across the eastern Gulf, maybe not. If it takes more of a westerly course, then it could be a much bigger deal for our area. And because there's so much uncertainty with the forecast, we want you to keep it tuned to Fox 10 News. We have newscasts in the morning, newscasts in the evening, and then we also have updates during the day and on our Fox 10 weather app. So the weather app's really the key because it will be updating you throughout the day with notifications, different things like, hey, this is the latest. It is coming our way. It's not coming our way. Those kind of things. So you can plan or prepare or relax and enjoy the weekend. So it'll be a helpful tool for you to have. Water temperatures obviously are scalding hot. One of the buoys out there in the eastern Gulf at 86 degrees. Anything over 82 is going to really promote tropical activity. And the first thing everybody gravitates to is water temperature, but there's some other factors that may affect this. And so we noted that the wave, when it was crossing the Atlantic, was likely not going to develop because of dry, dusty air out in the Atlantic. Well, there's still some dry, dusty air in the Atlantic, but you can see as it tries to track into the Caribbean Sea, it kind of mixes out. And on Tuesday, we would have a tropical system in the northern Gulf where there's no dust, nothing to inhibit the system. So the dust is not really going to have a negative impact on the system now. It did earlier, but it will not going forward. Wind shear. All right, now for a tropical system to get proper structure, it needs very light wind shear or no wind shear in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And it looks like the central Gulf is set up on Saturday morning for some development. There is going to be some light wind shear coming over from the Bahamas and over towards South Florida. So the further east it goes, the weaker it may be. There's going to be quite a wind shear in the Atlantic and also in the northern Gulf, which is kind of interesting because by Sunday and Monday, this thing could be getting into the northern Gulf and getting into a little bit of a shear axis there. But it does look like light shear over the Gulf. So it is pretty much green lighted for development, and that gives us an idea of what the environment looks like. Now let's talk about steering flow. Well, the Bermuda Ridge is weakening. That's what we thought would steer this thing in the Atlantic based on the European model, and that's what everybody's kind of leaning towards. And now that Bermuda Ridge, the one on the right side of your screen, that says blocking high pressure on it, that is weaker. And so there's a gap between that high pressure area and another high pressure area that's causing all the heat that's back over the desert Southwest. And so as we get into the weekend, there's going to be a weakness between these two ridges, and that's where the system is going to want to travel, but there are competing forces here, so the steering flow is weaker and it may not move very quickly. If it's closer to the east, it will move fairly quickly out in the Atlantic, but if it's more to the west, it could meander for a couple of days, and that's never good. We've seen storms do that, Elena, Sally. But this particular model does have it in the Atlantic as of Tuesday. So let's look at the new spaghetti models. This just came down, so this is good. I'm glad we're doing this. So These are some of the models that I'm going to show coming up on Fox 10 News tonight at 9 and 10 p.m. And it looks like one of the models has it just to the south of Cuba, but everywhere else is showing it moving along the northern coast of Cuba. And this is a little bit more favorable set of spaghetti models for us, but it's still way too early to get locked in on this. But it's showing Eastern Gulf, which is what we want to happen because it would be weaker there and it would move faster and it would have less time to organize. So all this works out, not just for us, but for our neighbors to the east. We could see tremendous rain across the Florida Peninsula regardless, but faster moving system would be good. Notice the H-curve, some of those blue lines just bring it up to around Tallahassee and it starts spinning around, and that could be very problematic if we see it stall, especially over Appalachia Bay or the Northeast Gulf, and just sits there. It's going to be a problem for whoever it ultimately hits when it comes ashore. All right, new European model has it right where we told you yesterday that it would be, over western Cuba on Saturday and emerging into the Gulf. So that's the Euro, and then it takes it generally up along the eastern side of the Gulf and into Appalachia Bay and Cedar Key area, but it kind of hangs out there. And you notice that it moves even out into the Atlantic on Tuesday. The GFS does something very similar through Saturday. It takes it right to the western tip of Cuba, and then as we get into Sunday, it brings it up across the western Gulf, which means it could develop. But then it just kind of meanders it here up into the Carolinas and kind of finally starts to move around a little bit. So I'll have to move that circle frame over a little bit because it does take it up towards the Carolinas, but it meanders it there. So that's something that could work in our favor. I'm scrolling through some radar views here. I do want to touch on one other topic. We've got a serious heat situation for tomorrow. This is likely going to be the peak of the heat wave. The Mississippi coast is under an excessive heat warning. The rest of our area, the majority of it, is under a heat advisory. Interestingly enough, they're not showing a heat advisory for Clark, Monroe, and Conecuh counties, but our models show highs up near 100 degrees in Clark County tomorrow. With the Gulf Coast humidity, we probably will see a heat advisory reissued at some point for tomorrow. And here's a look at the forecast. 99 in Evergreen and Grove Hill, 100 in Chatham and Calvert, 99 in Leakesville, 97 in Mobile, and then you factor in the heat index. Here's a look at the graph for Mobile tomorrow, and it looks like the heat index is going to be over 100 after 9 a.m., and it will stay over 100 through 7 p.m. So we're going to have a real high heat index for tomorrow. Hopefully that helps you out a little bit. We're going to post this on fox10tv.com as well. Just wanted to show you what we're thinking before we get into Fox 10 News at 9 p.m. And this is an evolving situation. We encourage you to watch Fox 10 News in the morning, in the evening, during the day. Matt will be in the morning, Nicholas during the day. I'll be in the evening. This weekend, Nick will be in. I may be in at some point this weekend too, especially if it looks like it's coming our way. We want you to keep you informed on what's happening in the tropics, especially when you have an uncertain steering environment. You got to keep an eye on these things. So we'll see you on Fox 10 News.